Now take someone like Beardy Man or modern mystic, I guess it was, and take Inmendham, please. They think they have figured out. They got an idea in their head about how the world works. So basically, they use their will to create an idea about how the world works based on their observations. And then they use that to prove they have no will and can't make observations. According to them, they made no choices to decide to create their beliefs. They made no choices. The history of the universe simply led to them being super geniuses and having figured out exactly how cause and effect works. And they have an idea in their head that's so reliable that even though they can't explain consciousness, and they don't have to try to explain consciousness, and they won't because it's stupid, they've proved everything you ever need to know about consciousness, which is this experience of the film strip. It doesn't really happen. It doesn't matter. It doesn't happen. We know that it happens, right? Even if there was a determinism, this is happening. This is one of the things that was determined. It's for sure happening. And they want to discount it because, there's people that say yes to life. There's people that say no to life. And the problem with the human world right now is that the latter kind run things, right? People that say there's nothing you can do about the situation of the world, they're a bigger problem than the people actually trying to fuck everybody else over that are making the world shitty, right? Now you could forgive them because maybe this is just the PTSD of 10,000 years of slavery. It could be understood, but it's still a problem that they have, right? That they happen to have with just history itself. The history of the universe itself has led to them in which perfect ideas exist. There's nothing they could do to create that idea. It just either happens or not. But it happened for them, you guys. It happened. They have a thing in their head that can tell you that your everyday experience of making choices is an illusion and doesn't really matter, right? And if you um, have a problem in your life, the decisions you make don't actually matter. It's simple, and they can live in their little um, homes and keep gardens and buy toys for themselves. In the case of Hythloday, they can please themselves, and none of it matters. They're not even doing. They're not even making a choice to buy that toy. History, the whole of universal history, merely led to the absolute necessity of them buying toys and being perfectly correct about how physics works. So correct that they don't even have to explain the data anymore. They can just ignore it. We got data we haven't explained. We don't have any theories of how consciousness happens, elusive or not, because of course it's elusive. Skeptics the skeptic philosophy is basically the idea that everything's elusive, right? What is an illusion? It's an idea like the sun is rising. That's an illusion. Why? Because it's a misunderstanding of what that phenomena. The phenomena exists, but the interpretation, the understanding of it has a mistake in it. Once we know there's a mistake, if somebody is still thinking of it that way, including ourselves, we still talk about it that way and think of it that way, we know that that's an illusion, like an optical illusion. We could go ahead and see the illusion, know it's an illusion, and have gotten past the illusion that way. The skeptical idea is that all of your ideas about the things you sense are elusive to some degree, but they can be compared. The illusion of seeing a Buddha in a cloud that's floating by, that's more elusive than seeing a Buddha in a piece of stone that's been carved into the shape of Buddha. So we compare these things. Somebody in comments recently said, well, there's no blue apples. Well, I've seen images of blue apples. Oh, but that's not a real apple. Exactly. Well, there's images and imaginary apples And there's real apples. What's the difference between the imaginary and real? You have data on both, but you got better data. What makes it better for the real apple? Well, there's not just for one, it's not just one sense like an image or the smell of an apple. You can taste it and touch it and look at it and smell it. It's the quality of the data that we use to distinguish a real apple from a fake apple. And every single day we're deciding whether we eat that apple or not. Whether we make an apple pie with it if we decide to eat it, whether they make an apple pie or apple juice or applesauce. And they have a theory just by luck that's perfectly correct that tells them those choices don't really happen. But ask yourself in your life, do your choices really happen? And once you check out and say your choices don't matter, you're not going to make them, do they really, does that really not make a difference? It's just as much as you accomplish just as much as if you actually try to use your energy to do something. Is that the result of your experiment on that? And meanwhile, these guys do spend their will playing with toys, gardening, things that make their little Epicurean lives better. It's a con job. They're telling you that there's no possibility of will. They're telling you this terrible world, they'll just garden. There's nothing, they have no other choice. So don't complain about anything that they do. It's not their fault that history itself has led up to them having an absolutely perfect conception of how the world works so that they can ignore data that they have, which is all they have, about how the world works. Well, let me tell you how the world works. We have these experiences and they are information. It defines what information is. We process that information and we behave, affecting the future. If I wake up in the morning and I find, oh, I'm in the house that feels cold, and I go over to the thermometer and I see, oh, it's 50 degrees, and I know if I turn on the heat, turn this one knob, this fan, and heat will come on, and within a half an hour it can be 80 degrees. And I know that because in the past, right, in the past, one of these sides, which one would be the past? This one's the past. In the past, I've done this knob turning before and I've seen that it takes a half an hour, and I've predicted the future. Well, I'll tell you what has to happen with will. Will, illusion or not, it has to come from physics. We're made of cells, and obviously we've decomposed what we're made of. In those parts has to be will, or the features that allow it to combine so that will is emergent. Either way, will is a phenomena made out of real stuff. And the combination of whatever parts of us is willing, and it's quite likely down at the physical level. You don't recognize an atom as willing the randomness, but the will is obviously a force that can interact with the fact that there's a randomness. Maybe there's no randomness. Maybe it's all will. This little tiny randomness, this weak randomness that exists because of quantum mechanics. Perhaps there's none. Perhaps the answer, the hidden variable, is the will. That seems odd, except for that we know the will exists. Determined or not, illusion or not, it's a phenomena. Like the sun rising, it happens. It has to be coming from the parts. There's nowhere else for it to come from. And it is here. And if you look closely at your experiences, you will find that embracing the fact that you can make a difference is how you make a difference. And maybe you're just afraid because you don't know what kind of difference, you need to make. So maybe you should study that.